So if I can hand over to the panel now to introduce themselves.
So I've got this strange mic. I hope you can hear me. But I'll have a go. My name's Louise Kilgannon and I work for Festive Road. I'm a consultant with Festive Road. We're a business travel consultancy on a mission for better travel and meetings management. We work with both the supplier community and the buyer community. And yeah, I've been there for 5 years. Delighted to be here.
And I'm Carol Fergus. I'm the travel manager for Fidelity, looking after everything travel related. So travel, events and ground transportation. Lovely to meet you all.
Hi there, my name is Simon Worrell. I'm the Global Medical Director at Collinson. You may have heard about Collinson. We've opened up 14 airport testing clinics up and down the country and also in America. But the day job is international medical rescue, which is what we normally do.
Thank you, folks. Simon, if you want to hold on to that microphone, because I'm going to come to you first, if that's okay. The first data point that I wanted to share with everyone today was the willingness from the global traveling community to get back on the road. You can see here 71% of executive level travelers are very willing to travel for business within the next 12 months. Now, this is great news for our industry, but Simon, I'd like to hear from you first. Is this appropriate? Should we all be getting back out there?
These are amazing statistics, aren't they? 71% of people want to start traveling. If we'd maybe had this conversation 6 months, 8 months ago, we wouldn't have had such optimistic stats. I think it is entirely appropriate, and the reason is the vaccination. Clearly, we've done three things. We've done vaccination, we've done testing, and we've had physical measures, masks, social distancing. But it's the vaccine, the amazing rapidity of its generation, the amazing results, and really importantly, it's the breaking of the association between cases and hospitalization. And that has led to us sitting here, thank goodness, us coming back to normal, and part of that is taking to the skies again.
Thank you. And I don't know about you, but a lot of the travel programs I've worked with, you have a smaller proportion of road warriors that we can see here. There's frequent travelers, but quite a long tail of infrequent travelers. And one of the things that struck me as I was looking at this was, is there pressure on those less frequent travelers to get out on the road again, now that they're seeing their colleagues doing that? And Carol, I wondered, how do you manage that? Well, first of all, is that something you're seeing in Fidelity? And if it is, how do you manage that?
Absolutely. So we've put together for our staff, our company has been very sort of empathetic about people going back to travel and the decisions that they make. Clearly, we have staff, their role requires them to travel, but what we say is, the position is that you follow the rules depending on where you're traveling to. And if you have concerns, part of our 10 steps back to travel, step one is have a conversation with either your line manager, your HR representative, or we have an external company that they can go and speak to. But we did a survey with regards to going back to travel, and 69% of our staff said that they cannot wait to go back. So we're very similar to what's being said out there anyway. And I think that even the long tail of travellers are willing to do that. But what concerns them is really how flexible it will be to travel. But yes, absolutely. We're very, very sympathetic and aware that there will be some anxieties about going back to travel and how we manage and support that.
And Louise, I mean, you work with a number of different customers. What advice would you give them in terms of managing this demand from their employee base?
Yeah, there definitely is a pent-up demand, and we're actually seeing in the survey results, if you delve deeper, it really backs this up, that a lot of the demand is coming from those road warriors. So people who deal with the customer side of the business, so lead generation, business development, maintaining relationships with customers and, customer retention, things like that. There's some things that people just all agree that it's better to do face to face. But I would say what we're advising our clients to do, and we've put together our purposeful travel model at Festive Road, which you may have heard of. this is a really unique point in time where the floodgates are about to open. And there's a really great opportunity for travel managers and corporates to take a step back and work out what kind of travel you want to let back through those floodgates. So do we want to just look at all that pent up demand and think, brilliant, go for it, guys, just go for it? I think most companies are looking at cost containment, they're looking at sustainability, and they're looking at other measures as well. Their employee well-being, just like Carol was saying, to make sure people feel really comfortable with traveling. So before those floodgates open, we really recommend that people take a step back and talk to the business, talk to travelers, and understand how they feel about travel. Which parts of travel are totally Zoom worthy now and you don't need to hop on a plane, and which parts are really valuable face to face. But the other point I wanted to make, Amy, is 69% is great, but I think as a travel manager, you should be focusing on the 31%. Why are they nervous about traveling? What are their key concerns, and how can you address it as a corporate, and how can you make them feel better if travel is a part of their job?
And Carol, I saw you nodding away there. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Absolutely. I think it's about communication. It's about giving them the information that they need with regards to giving them the comfort to want to go back to travel. It's about working with your suppliers and ensuring that you are passing that in the whole supply chain, you're passing that information through both ways, so that when your travelers get to book a travel, they feel, I know what to expect, I know what to do, I know who to go to, I know who to speak to. So I think you have to do a lot of work with these people, but it's how you communicate and provide them with the structure, the knowledge, and the different experiences of other travelers to give them that comfort to want to go back to travel.
Thank you.
Amy, we've just to add, we interviewed quite a lot of road warriors over the past 6 months. And the one thing I would say is make absolutely no assumptions about how people will be feeling, because some of the most seasoned travellers within organisations are feeling pretty nervous. And that might be because all of a sudden travel's been democratised. You maybe feel a bit more comfortable to say, I'm living with my 86-year-old mother and she's really vulnerable, or I have 2 kids at home and we have no idea how we're going to fit this in with our personal lives. So there's loads of different reasons that people might be feeling unsure about travel. So just talk to people.
And that's a great segue into the next piece, which is looking at what is it that travellers need when they get back to travel. What is it that they are looking for their employees to provide them? Now we've got 2 pieces here: flexibility, which 72% of respondents ranked as an extremely high requirement, and sustainability. Now, SAP's CEO, Christian Klein, talks about the need for businesses to make sustainability profitable and profitability sustainable. And Carol, I know your CEO has made some recent announcements around sustainability. So can you tell us a bit about that?
We've definitely put our stake in the ground, and our CEO has gone out there publicly and said that we are looking to reduce our air travel by 50% by 2024. So, I have to be seen to be making that happen. And the only way we could do that is to, as Louise said, identify the areas where we can do that, travel with purpose, so following the rules and the steps within that, and making sure that you look at the non-essential travel and put some guidelines and criteria in place so that people know what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. And also with regards to the approvers, the line managers, it just gives them the guidelines to make those informed decisions, and again, make sure that they have what they need to make those decisions. So a big chunk of our travel is internal travel. We see that as non-essential, but we understand that people will have staff, they'll have to go to training, etc., that they need to do. But we're now saying stay longer, use more of the technology, and that will support with our sustainability. It will support with traveller well-being, and also the reduction in cost. But in our surveys, to be honest, cost was at the bottom of the pile. It was more about traveller well-being and meeting our sustainability targets. So very much targeting a particular area where you can make the change, giving them a set of criteria and rules and guidelines that they can work with, and then saying, now you need to work with that and make it happen.
So do you see that very much as a top-down approach?
Absolutely. And in doing that, I've had to go and present to our board and get their buy-in. little old me going and saying you can't travel, they'll be like, yeah, whatever. But if I go and say our board has now said, and they've communicated that, and everyone's following it through. And I know it's working because I'm now being asked, as you know, the board is supposed to be the approvers, but they don't actually approve. It's the next layer down. So I'm now actually going out to the next layer down and going through the process with them, saying this is what you need to look at, these are the guidelines. So it is a top-down approach, and everyone's bought into it. And having seen our CEO put her stake in the ground, everyone's going, she means business. So it makes my life a lot easier in terms of meeting that target.
And Louise, I mean, we just said there that in Fidelity this is managed from a top-down approach. Are you seeing sustainability managed top-down or bottom-up with the majority of your customers, would you say?
I think it depends, really. I did some research for a client recently, and we were trying to understand where the demand for sustainable travel was coming from. And actually what we saw in the companies we talked to, it was a bottom-up approach. So it was coming from travellers, then corporates, and then suppliers were being kind of encouraged, or, I think with sustainability, if you're not doing something about it, you need to start really quickly, because it's not just a buzzword. And I think when we've looked in the past, if ever we used to call it CSR, right? And during a downturn, that always used to take a back seat. It all became about cost and profitability. And this time it hasn't. It's very much front and center of a lot of companies' corporate goals. Investor calls, more than ever, you're hearing the word sustainability on it. So it's not just good for PR, it's good for profitability as well. And I think it's really important. But we are definitely seeing, and I guess it's probably going both ways, there's the kind of sea-level piece, but travellers want to travel more sustainably. People are making better choices in their personal life, and suddenly that kind of jumping on a plane for any old reason just to solve a problem, I'm not sure it's going to cut it anymore. So I think it's a really important thing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, what surprised me about this slide was actually what's not on it. So at a very close third was vaccination demands. So flexibility has been ranked higher than vaccination demands in terms of what travellers need to get back out on the road. Simon, I'd like to get your views on that. I mean, do you think that's the right thing to be doing?
I'm a jobbing doctor, and so clearly vaccination should be right at the top. From my perspective, that is the key to unlocking everything, unlocking business, unlocking travel and trade. However, flexibility is very important, and we are at a place now that we are very used to virtual meetings with all their problems. I look forward to the lessening of the tyranny of the Teams meeting. I look forward to people thinking about what they want, sending an email, and then the person receiving an email, thinking about their response, and then sending it back. But generally, virtual meetings are very good. As has already been said, there's nothing like the real life contact, sharing a meal, understanding the person in greater depth, and that can only and will only help business relationships.
And I know Collinson, during the pandemic, were critical for a number of customers who did still need to travel, and you help customers through understanding the entry requirements and facilitating some of that. So from a flexibility standpoint, what are your thoughts in terms of the need to be flexible for entry requirements and whatnot?
As we've all seen, the entry requirements and the exit requirements from different countries around the world have changed at the drop of a hat. In the UK, they are undergoing a massive change 2 weeks ago. So we're going from the very expensive and specific sensitive PCR to the antigen test. That's going to happen, we hope, at the end of October, just in a few weeks' time. And keeping up to date with everything that's going on, the day 2, the day 8 for this country, and when we're leaving, which tests that you need and when for the country that you're going to, is incredibly important, and I think is difficult for HR companies to keep on top of, because it changes at the drop of a hat. It really does.
Yeah, and And I think that really is represented in some of the findings we've seen in terms of travel managers and companies looking to implement real-time updates and alerts. Now, this slide is interesting to say that 100% of travel managers expect their company to implement new guidelines and policies. But interestingly, 69% of the business travellers are also looking for their employees to make some changes. And they want those changes to be less restrictive, with some business travellers even calling for their companies to return to pre-pandemic policies. Louise, can I get your thoughts in terms of how we should be structuring the policies, how we should go about some of these changes that we're expecting?
Yeah, definitely. So in our experience, we worked with a lot of clients during the pandemic on creating temporary COVID policies, so pop-up policies. And that was really a very dynamic situation where the things were changing on a day-to-day basis. Clients who still had to get out on the road, who had a lot of key workers, were having to respond very quickly to a hugely shifting situation. I think we're at a point now where those COVID pop-up policies, as we called them, are kind of returning somewhat to a bit of normality. We don't need those anymore. But I would say that right now is the perfect time to take a step back again and review your policy and see whether it's still fit for purpose. There's a few reasons for that. So one would be that a lot of companies have had a real kind of aha moment during COVID. They've changed their outlook, they've changed their corporate values to kind of reflect the times a little bit more. So your policy should reflect that. So take a look at it. If you're constantly driving cost out of the travel experience, does that still fit with your sustainability goals? And does it still fit with traveller well-being? Are you still asking travellers to do things that they might not be so comfortable with? Things like the KPIs that you measure your policy with as well, are they still appropriate? So it's a really nice time to take a look at that. The one thing we found in terms of travellers' expectations, there was a strange kind of dichotomy in the research that it seemed that the more stringent and mandated a policy is, the more likely your travellers are to step out of that policy and to book directly with suppliers to get a bit of that control back. So I would say, again, employee engagement is so important. Find out why employees are doing that. Find out what their expectations are, because another statistic that came out of the research is that travellers are holding their employers more accountable for their health and well-being when they're on the trip. So what might that mean to you? We did our own research a while ago about the TMC sourcing process. 93% of buyers there said that they are now more interested in real-time servicing capabilities when their travellers are on the road. So it may mean partnering with different suppliers to give, like Carol was saying before, that extra reassurance for your travellers when they're going on their trips.
And Simon, from a health and safety perspective, what would be your advice to the travel managers in the room here and joining us virtually today?
Quite, thank you. Well, there's a new framework, international framework, ISO 31030, that's in the draft stage at the moment, soon to be published. It's a dry title for something which is actually of prime importance for companies. It's a framework that guides companies before someone travels, during the travel and after the travel, how to keep them safe from a health perspective, but also a security perspective. And we've all given some talks on this, haven't we? 31030. It's going to be really important for some large companies. It's a little bit daunting when you go through the framework, and it is quite clear that most companies, if not all companies, will need some advice from the security side of things. See, our company is partnered with GardaWorld, and they input security information on a day-to-day basis for our operations. On the health side, if we are sending people to especially remote places in the world, in order to be prepared for that, you do need to speak with people like me. There are other assistance companies available, obviously, but it's just people that know about the granular detail, the healthcare say, in Hoi An in Vietnam, as opposed to Hanoi. And if they were in a road traffic accident, you shouldn't take them to Hanoi. You should take them to the Bumrungrad Hospital in Bangkok. So just granular detail around the world, keeping people safe, and the 31030 really helps in that.
Thank you. So that's ISO 31030, because I saw a lot of people getting their notebooks out to write that down. We will have some time for Q&A in a moment, but before we do, Carol, as the buyer on our panel, Louise talked about the need to structure some of the policies. Can you tell us a little bit about what Fidelity are doing?
Well, we've exactly done that. I talked before about communication and making sure that your travellers and those that are managing those travellers know what to do and are comfortable about that. So we've just introduced, a while back, what we call our We Care policy, and we've made some changes to that. And one of those things is, as Louis says, if you make it too complicated, people will go off piste and do their own thing. We've kept it very, very simple. So it's anything over 8 hours, you travel in business class. That's most of our long-haul routes. They don't have to think about it. We take out that approval layer that we had before. People know exactly what they need to do. The reason for that is traveller welfare, well-being. In terms of travelling in business class, arriving feeling comfortable, they've had a good night's sleep, they've rested, etc., as opposed to going in economy or premium economy. And that's the reason why we did it. We listened to what our travellers were saying. We've taken out the complication of the approval process, and we've also allowed them to travel in a very safe and comfortable way. However, in terms of meeting our sustainability targets, we're saying stay longer, again addressing their traveller well-being. They're acclimatising, they're socialising more with their staff, they've been able to spend more time with them. So that helps to reduce the number of trips, but allows them again to travel in comfort. So we've made some really good changes, especially around our accommodation as well, working with our suppliers, making sure that they are COVID friendly, that they're safe, and advertising that to our travellers. This is what you can expect, and that's why the ISO
31030
is going to help if we all embrace that, and there's one standard when it comes to do your RFPs, working with your accommodations programs, etc. That standard's there, we're all following it. It takes away the pain of having to try and put something together yourself, and also it reassures your traveller that there is a standard that we're working to, and the suppliers that we're working with is following that standard. So yes, we have changed our policy, we have listened to our travellers, and it's not been about cost, it's about traveller well-being, meeting our sustainability target, giving the travellers the information and the flexibility that they need, but at the same time supporting our leaders and our approvers and our managers in enabling them to make very quick and informed decisions.
So safe, sustainable, and simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to that, because I think it's been such a tough 18 months. And it's hard enough to get the value of your travel program kind of under the spotlight when you are traveling, never mind when nobody is. But everything you just said, I think it really demonstrates to travelers more than ever why it's so important to have a travel management function and actually work very closely with preferred suppliers, because without that you couldn't have that reassurance. And if people are just going to do their own thing, I imagine that feels a little bit scary at the moment, and actually I think that's why the travellers want that additional reassurance.
Well, I'm going to make a plug for the buyers, especially now. Anyone that says that you don't need that role, they're really mistaken. Travel is a nightmare out there. I've said on a podcast that I did with Festive Road, it's trying to find sense out of nonsense. There's a lot of nonsense out there that we have to deal with, and if someone's not pulling that together, talking to the suppliers, working in partnership, and then aligning and bringing that into their culture and their environment, it will be all over the place. And the most important thing for me now is about personalisation and treating each booking as a project. And you can't do that if you don't have someone at the top that really understands what's going on and is able to share that information with the senior leaders in the organisation, as well as the travellers and the users of travel. So plug for the buyers. We are needed.
So, Carol, I'd just like to pick up on something you talked about earlier. In relation to sustainability, you mentioned that you're encouraging people to stay longer. What impact is that having from a leisure perspective, so where people are tagging on leisure trips to their business travel?
Well, we don't actually encourage leisure, although by default, if someone stays for 2 weeks, they'll have a weekend of doing whatever they want to do. But the reason we don't do that, and I actually spoke to our head of tax just to make sure that I'm not saying anything out of sorts. And although we have in the policy that you cannot extend your trip for leisure, what she did say is that because of the complexities of tax, and it's not everywhere, it depends on where it is, and the company just felt that, you know, for uniformity, it's better to just have it not as a policy, but we will look at it also as on a case-by-case basis. But we don't do it because of the tax reasons, and also now with the pandemic, it's about who takes responsibility for that individual when they're on the leisure part of that trip. So to take the complexity out of that is hard enough already. We don't encourage it.
Thank you. So before we move to Q&A, I just wondered, any final thoughts from our panellists today in terms of any of the data points that we've run through? Any closing thoughts that you'd like to leave us with?
Shall I kick off with my favourite statistic out of your survey, which was 1 in 10 partners of the employees. The partners wanted the employees out of the house. They've had enough of them and they want them to travel. So there are benefits, personal benefits to travel, but maybe relationship benefits as well.
Any final thoughts before we move to Q&A, or shall I open up to the floor?
Yeah, I'll go next. I just think that the data is really encouraging for the industry, but also for organisations and individuals. So I think, you know, it is great that we've been able to connect on Zoom, but just coming here today and the energy that you get from meeting people in person and the kind of serendipity of like bumping into people and having one-off conversations that you just wouldn't have had. And these are all the things that drive real value for individuals and for their organisations. And it's motivating, it's really energising, and you go back to your job surely doing it better. So I think these are the kind of examples that it's important to eke out from your travellers when you're talking to them, and to your clients as well. When does this happen, and when does it drive real value for an organisation versus doing it on Zoom?
Thank you.
I think finally for me, the data just validates what you've been thinking. I think for a buyer, it's quite encouraging that you're not completely off piece. But, you know, I just think every organisation is different, and it's about the appetite, the culture, and what's going to work in your organisation. But I think the data really helps.
Great, thank you. So we're going to open it up to Q&A. Unfortunately, we don't have any spare microphones, so if there are questions, I'd just like you to stand up, say your name, where you're from, and try and speak as loudly as you can, and we'll try and repeat the question for those joining us virtually. Any questions? No? Well, I think it sounds as though you guys have done a great job in terms of exploring all of the findings here today. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session, all of this information and more is available on the SAP Concur newsroom. Just under 4,000 business travellers and 700 travel managers across 25 markets participated in this survey. So if you were one of them, thank you very much.
Thank you.